And it's okay. So, dear friends, dear science fiction and fantasy film fans, we are here at Bastion 3 or 3 with our guest from Hungary, special guest, Eva Pancho, which will have a presentation about Hungarian science fiction and fantasy films. Eva Pancho is a scholar in the domain of science fiction films. She has a PhD on female monsters in the Star Trek universe. Also, she's editor-in-chief at a Hungarian publishing house. Also, she is a translator, so she is active in many domains. We are so proud to have her tonight with this presentation, and I'm welcoming her. Thank you for being with us, Eva. And please talk about your domain that you like so much, science fiction films, and particularly Hungarian films in the last years.
Okay, thank you. So it's my pleasure to talk about Hungarian fantastic movies. I will talk about fantasy, science fiction, and all the other fantastic subgenres. So I won't definitely focus on science fiction, especially because recently we did not have science fiction movies in Hungary. So I will focus on speculative fiction in a broader term. To start with, I would like to begin with some historical background. I won't spare a lot of words on the history of Hungarian science fiction and fantasy film, because we are here to talk about what we have now. But to understand the specifics of Hungarian sci-fi and fantasy and fantastic movies, it's nice to know something about the best of our movies. Darius, could you please jump to the second slide? Yes, this is the beginning. Yes. The second one, yes, you can see an alternate Budapest on the picture. And the first slide is about the very beginning of Hungarian fantastic movies. It's so interesting that our first examples are from the silent era. One of the first movies is Triton, which is so interesting because it's from 1917 and we have the movie because its copies were found on a cellar of a family house. Accidentally, when they were renovating the house, the granddaughter of the director renovated the house and found the copies of that movie. It's a short film. It's about a sea monster. You can see the sea monster on the right corner of the picture. Actually, it's so funny. It's a love story with a sea monster who is looking for a wife or a mate. He comes out of the Adriatic Sea, and it was played by a swimming champion. It was like when Johnny Weissmuller played Tarzan. We had our Johnny Weissmuller playing the sea monster in this short movie. And in this time, there were also quite popular movies like The Saucy in Grey or The Soul of the Sun, but they were promoting scientific discoveries. So they were more or less a kind of popular science movies to share what science has in that days. The other great achievement from the first half of the century was Sirius, which is an extremely interesting movie. It's a time travel story, very similar to that of A.G. Wells, but the original of this film was published before A.G. Wells wrote his novel. And it's the character in the reading role. The main character is played by Katalin Karadi, who was the most famous femme fatale actress of this era. I mean, she was the lady with the long cigarillos. She was singing. She was super famous in her times. She immigrated to the US a little after in the middle of the 20th century. And what's the fun part? This film anticipates some tropes of Back to the Future. I mean, going back to the past, meeting your grandmother, meeting your ancestors, falling in love with your other ancestors, and causing funny temporal paradoxes. That's exactly what happens in Sirius. It's just like 60 or not, it's just 40. Okay, I'm not that good at numbers, but way before Back to the Future was written. Can you please jump to the next one? From the Second World War till the transition, there was a kind of golden age of the science fiction in terms of literature. We usually say that this was the period when the most books were published. So in literature, in printing, science fiction was extremely popular. Film was a bit different case. I mean, after the Second World War, science fiction and fantasy film almost disappeared from the film producing. And then it took till the 70s to revive. The revival of the fantastic film producing was in the 70s, maybe correlating with the growing popularity of printed science fiction. Then there was no fantasy. So in these ages, we are talking about science fiction specifically. In the 70s or 80s, fantasy was literally not existing in Hungary, not in printed version, not in printed format, and neither in film. And there are some interesting examples from this period. We had adaptations of international authors. For example, we tended to adapt Robert Shackley for some reason. He was so popular and he was adapted more than once. The Task is an interesting film because this is a television adaptation of Peter Zsoldos's novel with the same title. Peter Zsoldos is the legendary figure of Hungarian science fiction. The Hungarian Science Fiction Award, what we have, is named after Peter Zsoldos. So that means that really he is an influential person in Hungarian science fiction. This Task, this three-part adaptation, the upper part on the right with the guy around the device around his head. This is from that movie. It's from today's point of view, it's a very interesting film because it preserves all the philosophical and moral questions of the original novel. It has very nice music. I mean, Pink Floyd, for example. So it's good to watch. But anyhow, it's still some TV movie from the 70s. So if you look this movie now, watch this movie now, it feels a bit outdated, even if it was a high achievement at those days. The other name we have to mention is András Rajnai, who was, as I said, a legendary but very controversial artist. And he was known for his experimental filmmaking. For example, he started to make green box when that was called blue box, so that was blue box back in the 70s. So he started to work with blue box technology, which was very, very modern in these times, but still his films are themes of memes and jokes nowadays because he had no money. He was so enthusiastic, but he didn't have a producing company or this kind of infrastructure behind him. So he did movies on a very, very, very low budget, mostly. The most, infamous work of András Rajnai is The Adventures of Pilot Pirks. It was a series, and it's so famous because he used to create the spacecrafts using whatever he had. I mean, the coffee machine, the lemon screwer, what he found in the kitchen or in the room of his child or wherever. He used all these items to create the space items. You can see the picture at the left that he uses the device when you cook pasta to throw the water out. He used this one for a space station. So that was, sometimes there were screenings of his movies and there were contests that who can realize more kitchen equipment in his movies. So he's so famous, but it's very, very funny if you take a look at his films from now this point of view. Stefana, can you step to the next? Thank you. Yes, and getting closer to nowadays, it's like I say, I separated the films from 1998, the transition, the age of the transition, and the ending date of this period is 1918, and it's not it's a how to explain? It's a practical division, and not because of COVID. The transition is logical, and the ending date of this period is the death of Andy Vajna, who was the head of Hungarian filmmaking for a period. And after his death in 2019, everything changed. The whole structure of the Hungarian filmmaking changed when Andy Vajna died. So that's an end of an era in the Hungarian film producing. So that's why this is a separate period to talk about. There are two main characteristics, or three, of these films. They focus on the atmosphere and the surreal images rather than any sci-fi high-tech stuff. Maybe it's connected to the financial issues. I mean, producing a high-tech sci-fi with space battles that costs a fortune, but usually the filmmakers doesn't have, especially because science fiction film producing was not that popular after the transition. Before the transition, the movies we saw were mainly for television and not for the movies, not for the cinemas. And we rarely made science fiction or fantasy movies for the cinemas. And that tendency continued after the transition. So from low budget, what can you do? Some special movies when the emphasis on the atmosphere or on the story, not on the high-tech gadget or the green box technology or whatever, the CGI, for example, that's unbelievable, no CGI solutions. The other thing is that we are tend to mix the genres. I mean, elements of magical realism, folklore, whatever we have. We really don't have sci-fi or fantasy movies that are clear-cut sci-fi or fantasy, or it's very, very rare. I have no obvious explanation for that. Maybe we tend to experiment with mixing the genres, or maybe it's connected to financing issues. But it's true that we tend to mix the genres. And of course, what I said, that low budget but visually inventive art house films. So how to make interesting movies with no money or with not that much money. That's the summary of Hungarian science fiction and fantasy film producing. Of course, no money or few money is in terms of a kind of American production or something. They are not working for nuts. But still, it's nothing compared to the cost of an American or Western European sci-fi movie. I listed some influential films from this era. I don't want to talk a lot about all of them. It's just a kind of it's a menu to see that what we have and what are the interesting movies. Meteo is a classic art house film. It has become a cult movie in 1990. I swear that no one is watching it now, but it has a cult status among sci-fi movie lovers. From Lisa the Fox Fairy, with the picture down there with the Japanese guy in the very ugly suit. It's not a sci-fi or a fantasy. It's a very strange movie. It's about a nurse, and she is very lonely, and she has an imagined friend, a fictive friend, a Japanese pop singer. They tend to sing together, dance together. It's her best friend. And at the end, the girl falls in love with a proper guy, I mean a normal living guy. And then out of jealousy, this Japanese pop singer turns her into a fox fairy. Fox fairies are quite popular in Japanese mythology. So this is a kind of fantasy movie or a mystical fantasy or something very surprising with a lot of Japanese pop music and an alternate Budapest, like when Budapest was grabbed out of time, so you can decide whether it's the 90s or the 2030s. So it's a very, very peculiar movie. Loop is more more common. It's about a time loop. It's a time loop thriller about a guy who tries to survive. So it's more like the American style with action sequences, with action scenes. It's interesting because we will meet the author Isti Madarász later because he's still producing sci-fi films nowadays. Jupiter's Moon is also something special. There is an immigrant refugee boy who realizes that he can levitate without no scientific explanation, that it turns out that he has this ability. And it's about all the philosophy and trying to explain what the heck is happening, why he started to levitate. So it's also some fantastic element, but without scientific explanation. As I said, we don't have proper sci-fi or fantasy. We have these mixed movies with mixed storylines or story plots. His master's voice is an adaptation of Stanislav Lem. That's the most common or commerce sci-fi among these movies. That's a kind of sci-fi story, but still with a storyline that takes place in the present and follows a family. So still it's Lem, yes. It has a sci-fi plot, but the half of the movie, it's a kind of family movie or a family story. And I couldn't skip Space Geezers or Űrgammák, which was a TV series when I was growing up. That was very funny, awful, and still very interesting because it was created to promote sciences for high school students. So the story was taking three high school students to a spacecraft when they have to use what they learned in the school or what they should have learned in the school to survive or to solve problems on a spaceship. It was very, very successful. Everybody hated it, but still it was very successful. It's a very special work of the Hungarian television series producing. Actually, I liked it, but it was something really unexpected. Stefane, thank you. And now, so what we have today, this is the past, like before the COVID. And what we have today to talk about. Still, we have no classic sci-fi or fantasy. So this genre blending tendency, it continues. We still don't have clear-cut genre movies. We are still interested in historical trauma, ghosts, liminal times, or like historical events. So something which is specifically Hungarian, more than spacecrafts or, I don't know, alien planets or aliens. Still, as I said, it has budget issues. Nowadays, the National Film Institute, which is in charge of giving money, they don't really like fantastic movies, so they tend to not to fund sci-fi or fantasy movies. There is a fun fact about this. One day, Sándor was pitching an urban fantasy story. You know, urban fantasy, when there are fantasy elements in a metropolitan setting. His story is about dragons and magicians in Budapest, living in Budapest. So urban fantasy. And he tried to pitch his story to make a TV series out of his book. And none of the people who were attending the pitch know what is urban fantasy. He had to start from the very, very beginning saying that, okay, fantasy, you know fantasy? No, you don't know fantasy. Okay, then fantasy is this. Okay, then urban fantasy is that. So that's how the National Film Institute approaches fantastic genres. So you can imagine how often do they tend to fund sci-fi or fantasy movies. And that's a bit detour, but good to know that in Hungary, if you want to produce a movie, there are not so many ways to get funded. We have the National Film Institute, and you can apply for funding at the Film Institute, or you can try to do some kind of independent movie, but that doesn't work that well. I mean, we know examples, but it's very hard to gather all the money without the support of the National Film Institute. So when they don't like something, or a genre or a director or an actor, that won't happen in the next few years. So that's the tendency of Hungarian film producing. So they don't like sci-fi and fantasy, so we don't have them. And the other thing is the intimate settings and personal stories. As you will see, there will be very strong characters and very strong personal stories instead of large world building or stories full of adventures. That's also what we don't have. We will talk about the movies in detail later, but just you can see some photos here which reveal that there are not going to be action-paced, scientific, full of aliens, whatever. You can see an old photographer. There you can see an alternate futuristic city. The guy eating his grandma's bed, a slice of bread. Or left on the down, there are the people in white. They are dead people. I mean, they are just stuck. We'll talk about it later. They are the dead people. The costumes are not that expensive. So that's how we tend to make these movies. Thank you. So let's talk about specific movies that were made recently. And by recently, I mean in the last 6 years after 2019. The first one was Postmortem. It's a bit tricky because it's more or less a horror kind of movie. It's about a photographer who goes to small villages and tries to take photos of the dead family members. So with the images of the dead family members. But it turns out that dead people are walking around and scaring to death the living ones. And this all happens in a small Hungarian village, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and it's in the past. I mean, it's after the First World War, and the ghosts of the dead people are quite unfriendly. There are some pictures we can recognize from other horror movies. I mean, for example, a ghost floating under the ceiling, and all the people watching and screaming the floating or the flying body. It looks like a bit The Exorcist. So there are some similarities we know from other movies. But this was our official entry for Oscar in 2022. We didn't go with it, so it goes so far with this application. But still, as you can see from the movie poster, it has won many awards in the category of some strange horror or whatever. And that's what the critics said, that it has an endearing indie charm. Honestly, I liked it. I mean, this is not a perfect movie because there were problems with the tension. I mean, the ghosts were scary at the beginning and scary at the end, with no increase in the tension or no increase in the danger they mean. So that's a problem of storytelling, but still it's something worth to watch. As far as I know, it's available on Netflix, so anyone can watch. I'm not sure if it's available from Romanian Netflix. So there are some differences what is available from different countries, but it's worth to take a look if someone is interested. Okay, Space Picnic. I was wondering if I should leave this out because it's so stupid, sorry to say. It is about a university student, as you can see, that he's sending signals to space, and then once an alien responds, and they come to Earth to meet Sarolta Zalatnai, who is let's say pop singer in Hungary, but she's like a pop singer of the old days. And now Sarolta Zalatnai is just the subject of jokes. I mean, she's not a serious, famous pop singer. We are just mostly laughing at her singing activities. So meeting her, that's so funny because it's her pop idol, like that she's the one. And this is a comic movie. I mean, it's a sci-fi. It has the alien, it has the spacecraft, but it's definitely a parody comedy kind of movie. As you can imagine, there is music. Just take a look at the movie poster, and you can take it serious, but still it's funny in its way. That's what the critics said, that you are not supposed to take any of it seriously. So no, but if you like Hungarian pop music or want to try it, it's something to begin with. It's available as Synago streaming platform. I'm not sure if you know that or it's available. Yes, but if someone is so interested, you can do the research. Please. Halfway Home is directed by Isti Madras, as I said, who did the time travel loop movie. He still does science fiction movies, but this is something more peculiar. It's about a night guard who works at the morgue, and it turns out that he has an ability or a skill that he sees dead people, and they ask him for help if they have any unfinished business.
We had this film in our film festival.
Really?
Yes.
So good. Did you see it?
Yes.
Did anyone else see it? Okay.
It's a good film.
It's a good film. It's a very good film.
Yes.
It's a so nice movie.
Yes.
And of course, one day a dead girl appears in the morgue, his love. So it's a love story with ghosts in a morgue, with the nice guy. You see on the poster the guy and the girl. It's cute, and it's written by Attila Veres, who is quite well known in Hungary for writing weird fiction. He's the most famous horror weird writer of Hungary. And he's also a scriptwriter. So in this movie, he combined his skills writing some weirdish movie about the guy at the morgue. So yes, it's romantic and comic. Now it's super cute. I mean, honestly, let's say that's interesting. The setup is interesting with the ghosts, and the whole story is well written and cute. It's also available at Synago streaming platform, which is not known for you, but maybe, yes, you could have seen it at Darius's events last time. Can you please, Darius, jump? Yeah. This is something very, very closely connected to the pandemic. There was a film, Attila Zsótér, who had a live project, and he tried to make something before the pandemic. And then came the COVID, the restrictions, that we couldn't go out, and all these things that we know well from our past. And he had the opportunity to create a movie about all these lockdowns. This is also not as queer sci-fi or fantasy. It's about dreams or nightmares merging with reality. I mean, we all know that well. You are sitting in your apartments, or the people are just faces on your computer because you are not supposed to meet. You are wearing the face mask, sitting on your bench and watching the TV. So these were specific times. And this series reflects on this kind of reality that we had during the pandemic. And he also filmed most of it, or filmed the parts of it during the pandemic. So it's very interesting. I would say it's an experiment, but it's a very successful experiment. And why people say that it's a kind of love child of Twilight Zone or Outer Limits, because what connects, it's a kind of anthology. I mean, the episodes are not really connected. It's like an anthology series. And there is a voiceover who narrates all the stories, and that is what connects the episodes of Quarantine Zone. This narration that comes back again and again, and that's why the critics said that it's something like Outer Limits, because of this narrative structure or narrative solution. Yes, Black Mirror is a comparison because of the merging unreal into real. I mean, imagining something that could have been, it's not, but the boundaries of reality are not that clear in the quarantine zone. And that's available on HBO Max. That was uploaded. You can watch on HBO Max. I think the poster of the movie says that it's deeply disturbing in a way. It's interesting, but it's still disturbing. You won't feel that good after watching Quarantine Zone, even if nothing special happens. I mean, no aliens tearing body parts down or something. It's just that disturbing that you feel at the back of your head or at your neck that something is not okay. Okay, please. Yes, what I said, we have no normal versions. It's a time travel movie, but it has practically nothing to do with science because the protagonist, Mishi, can travel through time when he drinks short spirits. He is on a drug experiment and he realizes that when he drinks shorts or shots, then he can travel back to time. And of course, what he does, he drinks a lot to use one of his new skills, and that's funny. I mean, it's very Hungarian. Going to a local small Hungarian pub and asking for a shot, that's some very, very Hungarian experience. So this movie was told not so easy to understand for ones who are not Hungarian, because there are so many jokes and references to Hungarian drinking habits. And when he meets the family, and all the circumstances are so specifically Hungarian, that is interesting for a foreigner, but sometimes not so easy to enjoy, or you enjoy differently because when we understand other subtle jokes as well from the story. It's also on Netflix, and Filmio is I think you can connect. Filmio is the streaming platform of the Hungarian National Film Institute. They have a lot of movies there. I mean, even old ones. So if it's available from here, I suggest to try, because they have a lot of things. They make available a lot of things from the Hungarian filmmaking, not only sci-fi and fantasy, but in general, whatever they had. So what we call, it's our little small and green Netflix, but it has interesting movies. Please. Yes, in the introduction, I said that there are sci-fi movies, but created under difficult circumstances, let's say. It is directed and written by Peter Noel. We also published his book. That's a classical sci-fi. So with two plots in two different timelines. From the other picture, you saw the modern city with the spacecraft in the background. So that's the 2063 Budapest. And we have the soldier, we have all the tropes that we know from sci-fi movies. Like there is identity, and what is your identity, how to regain your memories. So these are the tropes we met in sci-fi films or books. So he didn't find out anything special or very new. And what the other question or problem was that he was working on a very low budget. So he imagined a huge blockbuster with all the American style and gadget and visuals, and tried to make it with more or less no money. You can imagine the end of this combination. I mean, this is, as I dreamed big, it's charmingly amateurish. That's what the critics said. That's that's putting it very nicely, because it's almost impossible to watch. So it's something just for someone who is really brave. But if we are talking about science fiction movies that were made, yes, it was made and it was screened, so it exists. Most science fiction fans tend to make fun of this film. So yes, but I mean, Yeah, I must say that even the script was awful, which is the less expensive part of making a movie. So, yes. Okay, but it was the dream of the director. I mean, you have to consider that it's one man's dream, and at least he made his dream come true. Okay, the next one, please. Sorry? Yes, yes. The dream of the director and nightmare for all, yes, for other people. Uh, we should talk about animation movies because Hungary has a long tradition of creating animation movies. And in animation, we also have scientific tropes or specifically sci-fi works. I also begin with the history of Hungarian animation, focusing on sci-fi and fantasy. Primarily, these animated series, these were mostly series, were aimed at young audiences for fun. I was growing up watching these. They were made earlier than I was born, but they were still on the TV when I was young because they were so popular, especially Mezga Family, that was still on air when I was young. These are so funny. I mean, the Mezga family is about a family in their times, I mean, in the 90s, and they have a connection to their grandson who lives in the future. And sometimes they can talk through a special radio, and their ancestors, sometimes their grandson, sometimes sends him stuff from the future, and they always break the window because they always forget to open the window. That's a recurring scene. And we always see the futuristic circumstances of MZ Perix. He's this future family member. So it was so funny. There are still sayings from this TV show. For example, it's quite famous that I should have married István Hufnagel, means that the wife is always not happy with her husband. And she keeps saying that I shouldn't have married you. I should have married the other guy. And that is what she keeps saying. So this series is about a family with this science fiction addition with the future guy. Microbe was also very popular with the micro robot down there. Aladar Mezga was in nowadays terms, the spin-off of the Mezga family about the sun. So these were influential. I mean, if someone was growing up in Hungary in the 70s or 80s, he couldn't avoid to watch any of these. So they were really influential. And there were also full-time or feature-length animation movies. The Masters of Time is a very special example because it's really well known, and it's not Hungarian, or not only Hungarian. It was a Hungarian-French co-production, and it was the highest achievement of the Hungarian animation studio in these days, copying with the French. It was the peak of Hungarian animation in the 90s. We are still so proud of that movie, even if it was a co-production. We mostly did the animation part, doing really the animation. And the picture on the right down is the greatest work of Hungarian animation, if I can tell, from this era. It's called Cat City. It's a superhero movie in animation, practically, or a James Bond movie in Hungarian animation. There is the protagonist who is like James Bond or Superman with a sign on his shirt, and there is a word, and the cats are ruling the world, and they are mice, so they don't like cats. They are oppressed, and there is a secret plan for a robot or machine to defeat the cats. This is a robot dog, practically, that will defeat the cats. And there are different kinds of adventures and chases. So it's really, really like a kind of James Bond movie, but with mice, with cats, with a dog robot, with singing rats, with bats. So it's something very, very unique. Actually, I haven't met anyone in my life who didn't like it. So it's really something very, 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 very funny. Even with the singing. I mean, it has singing parts, but still. Please. Okay, so what we have now in terms of animation. I'm so sad to say, but we have Cat City 2, which is just as bad as part 2 movies tend to be. I mean, they wanted to continue the very successful Cat City movie because everyone loved it. And the Cat City 2, that was, I'm sorry to say, but awful is a nice term to describe the sequel of this movie. They should have never made it, practically. The other movie we have, which is a very unexpected one, is Cycle. It's about an astronaut who is trying to flee because some kind of black fog is following and swallowing him, and he is trying to escape. It has no more precise explanation. I mean, it's a bit blurry that why and what is it happening, but it was made by special animation style. It was made in a special animation style. So that's why it is interesting. It has no picture. It has an ugly skull kind of head in an astronaut suit. It wasn't a huge success. I mean, I think not that many people watched the Cycle. It was an experiment. But what is rather popular and well known, and even went to festivals, is the White Plastic Sky. I was thinking of playing the trailers, but for technical reasons, I don't try. But you can find the links to the trailers or to the whole movies if they are available, because White Plastic Sky is there upright. You can see the title. It's a kind of post-apocalyptic Budapest, and when people can decide to die at a moment to help growing new plants. So there is no food, or there's lack of food in this post-apocalyptic world. You can see this is the chain bridge or something, and there is no Danube, so it's a real Hungarian post-apocalyptic. It was my fault. Okay. So it's a post-apocalyptic world, but with some more optimistic tendencies about fresh start or something. And it has very interesting imaginary or visually. It's visually nice to see that we get used to post-apocalyptic views, but this is Mad Max and all the American style with the ruined Liberty Statue or something. And it's so fun to see the post-apocalyptic Hungarian countryside. So that's why it is so special. And the critics review from all around the world were quite well. I mean, they wrote nice things about this movie. So it's really something we should be proud of. Under the under picture down there is the forces of the coyote. That's also something that I can describe as sci-fi or fantasy or something. It's like a history of creation. It's based on the Native American Indian mythology about the coyote and about the creation of man. And it follows the history of man getting the fire, knowing the animals, and it follows it's a fox, I think, it in the story, or a coyote kind of. Yes, it's coyote. So it's something not specifically Hungarian. Actually, I'm not sure how some Hungarian guy come to make a movie about the Native Americans' beliefs of creation. But it was very successful. So it had its audience. And it's the drawing style or the visual style is quite simple, but the philosophy behind the visuals and the story, that is very interesting and an insight to the indigenous American culture. So Yes, it's another thing that you wouldn't expect in Hungary from a fantastic movie. We also have animation short movies. I want to talk about a bit longer about Ambassadors of Cosmos, because that's something I really like. It's about sending two dogs to the outer space as the ambassadors of the humanity. And they do all the stuff what people usually do before you go to space. I mean, they are put in the gear and turned around. They do all the medical checks, but on nice and ugly dogs. And they go to outer space. And Shilao is about the identity of a robot. I mean, he realizes that he's looking for his identity. It's some more common topic. Okay. Yes, and this is to end with the short films, because we know that if you don't have money to make a feature-length film in sci-fi, in terms of sci-fi or fantasy, then you can still try to make short films because of the lower budget. So that's another opportunity. They are space for experimentation, but they don't have a very strong tradition. It's a pity, but you can barely watch short movies in Hungary. I mean, if I have the opportunity to watch short movies, I always go because it's rare. In the movies, they don't screen them. Maybe on film festivals, they tend to show short movies, but that's the only option to watch them. And it's interesting that some young people are trying. So just some short words, because we are running out of time. Doll number 639, it's about a dystopian future when the protagonist is getting a new doll every day. There are no connections between people. The only companion he has is a doll, a female doll, that he gets in the evening, and in the morning is disposed, thrown into the disposal tube or something like that. But one day it doesn't work and he cannot dispose the doll. And that's a short film. It has a very interesting message about losing connections of people. Earthy People is also something special, because this is the school leaving exam film of a young director, Adam Freund, and it's about a village boy, or he lives not even a village, if there is some small house in the middle of the fields. And that's where he lives with his father and mother, and his father is building a spaceship in the barn. And once his father just flies away. And he stays there that I hate you, mom, I hate my dad, I hate space, because my father is just gone to space by a spacecraft built in the barn. Okay, what should be also mentioned, I try to skip the AI versus deep state and fourth dimension. They are happy people. Let's talk about AI versus deep state and fourth dimension. They are typical sci-fi topics. One is about going back to the history of Hungary to see what happened then. It's the fourth dimension, or about the AI gaining more and more power in our days. So they are more or less typical tropes of science fiction. Happy People, anyway, it's something surprising, because it is about a world when your level of happiness is written on your throat and everyone can see, and if you are not happy enough, that can cause a problem. And in the story, the boy and the girl meet again after they were a couple, but it was before, and they weren't happy enough. So it's about looking for happiness. It has love, and this peculiar idea of having your happiness level written on your neck. Shaman is a big cyberpunk production in terms of short films. Just three sentences, I promise. And this was, Shaman was filmed in 2025, but it has an earlier version. So Robert Odegnal, who is the creator of the film, he has made different versions of this movie. Also, he wrote a book or comic on this story. So this is one of his life's work. and he tends to rewrite or refilm it again. It's cyberpunk. It's a Hungarian cyberpunk story about a guy who is called the caller, who can understand what others not. So he has a special ability, and that's why he's in the middle of the event. And to finish with something that brings hope, that we saw student films, that films that were made by university students at the end of their studies or MA or BA studies, The Stranger and The Transition, and they tend to make sci-fi. I mean, we went to watch the school leaving films this is the Academy of Film and Theater in Hungary, the University of Film and Theater, and they make crimes. Some of the students' film were crime stories, but there were fantasy and sci-fi about a procedure that makes you younger, like you wear a bracelet and you get younger, and how it affects a family when the wife becomes young and the husband remains old because he doesn't want that procedure. And it's like a 10 minutes long short film, but it's something really sci-fi, and it was made by a young, I should say, boy. He was like 20. So we have hope for the future because apparently we have the young filmmakers who are still interested in producing science fiction. Okay. Thank you for your attention. This is from with the Xanox, with the drinking alcohol movie. I mean, the picture says that it's funny. So, questions, Q&A session.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. Very interesting from the point of view of a science fiction film fan like me that knows almost nothing about the Hungarian, which is very sad because we are neighboring countries, so the cultural exchanges should be stronger than there is now. And that's the question from me: how can we promote this festival to young students or film creators in Hungary in order for them to submit for our film festival?
I don't know the perfect answer. Actually, I was surprised that there are no Hungarian applicants for this film festival because they have the films.
We accept student films, so it's not a problem.
So they should try. I think for some reason, for them, it's not on the radar. I mean, they just don't know about this opportunity because when we were speaking about coming to Timisoara to talk about Hungarian movies, and they were surprised to hear that this festival exists. Yes, so maybe that because they do and they have ideas, and this is a good opportunity for them to meet like-minded creators. So
maybe if you can make contact with the University for Films and
yes.
Theater, and to let them know that we accept submissions, even if they are student submissions. Can we do that?
Yeah, sure. I think so.
Okay. So if there are not any more questions, I thank you again. And I hope that we will see Hungarian films because for sure there are talented people there. I saw the Halfway Home film, which was rather good. I'm so sorry it didn't win any prize because it had some fierce contestant in the same year, so they didn't get the prize. But this was a very good film, and I enjoyed it. And I'm sure that, as you said, there is hope from a younger generation that is still attracted to these subjects from science fiction and fantasy films. So we must make ourselves known in Hungary as a
yes,
film
let me
festival.
try. Yes, that's we try to help.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.